Hey, I want to wrap up our FANG stocks. So, in this video, we're going to go over Apple, Google, Amazon. Those are the three that we haven't touched yet. Uh, the last time we looked at these three was about mid-April. So, roughly 2 months ago it's been since we last checked. Um, this is also just going to be technical analysis. I want to put that up front. Um, Also, if you have any questions or want to, give your opinion on any of these, feel free to do so in the comments. But with that out of the way, let's just start with Apple. So last time we looked was April 17th. It was trading at 165. We had buy points marked at 146 and 160. We didn't put a resistance point in at that time, and that's because based on our note, it was in the short-term uptrend. So I didn't feel comfortable putting one in. I do plan on putting one in today, and we also noted to buy the dip. So let's take a look at its chart and see what's been going on. So on 4/17, that would have been here-ish, this little sliver of a week. Somewhere in this week, we checked in. Ever since then, it's been going straight up. Um, it has pulled back a little bit, but for the most part, it has just continually just gone up and up and up, all the way to about 180. If we scale back, this is a new high. It reached higher earlier this past week, but still to this day, it's at all-time highs. So congrats, Apple. I just want to pull this out, give us a little more time. Um, Let me zoom out a little bit. Let me do this. Okay. Um, so this will take us till the end of, or about mid-September. If we do the same over here, just trying to keep them parallel for the most part. It's a pretty narrow channel, but also it's really going up very rapidly. Um, but yeah, let's just update it. So from 165 all the way up to 180 now. We had buy points at 146 and 160. Based on this, where we were before, 160 was coming in based on if during that week it would have pulled back all the way to the bottom of that uptrend channel. That would have been roughly 160. We put in this yellow trend indicator. I was hoping it would pull back. It obviously didn't. So we're just going to get that out of here. Uh, but overall, I mean, this is a very tight channel. I mean, just to take a point of this week, for example, the bottom of the channel is 173 and the top of the channel is 184. So this is a $10 very tight channel that it's been in effect since January of this year. That's incredible. I Because most of our channels have been, I guess just to put it into a percentage, maybe like 10 to 20% of the stock value. So for this one, that would have been like $16 to $18 minimum, up to double that. But this one is just a $10 channel since January. That's crazy. Okay, so short-term uptrend, still intact since January of this year. Buy dips, I still like that until I see otherwise. Um, I guess if I were to update this to find a support mark, because at this point, um, man, I'm tempted to just remove all of these channels. I'm just trying to see. I don't really like this resistance mark. This one's fine. I'm gonna make this one the new uh, master resistance point at about 172, and that's just based off. It looks like it Tested it once, twice, three times, and now this fourth time it's gone above and beyond this 180 mark, the all-time highs. That's should I'm gonna leave it in for right now until we circle back just to see how this goes. But that is meant to indicate the all-time high. Um, I'm looking for just resist or support lines here, and there's not much. Like, I guess this one right here, we could argue somewhere like here. I'm comfortable with that. These are like the lows, but clearly there's something here. I'm looking for another one if possible. There's just not much. Um, when it's come off of those highs, it caught itself for a second here. Ultimately, it pulled back here. I guess we could say right here. This might be the new buy point, and we do have that at about 146. So the reason 146 I'm picking that is because once it got above that mark, the second time, it kind of hung out there. So that kind of shows support. We could see it tested close back to 150, popped right back up. It did go below for about 2 months, um, again for about a month. Here's another month and a half, 2 months. And then ever since January, kind of hung out there, testing it, pulling it back, but wouldn't go below. And now here we are on the up and up. I'm going to be interested to see this one, in terms of just what's been going on with this. But yeah, I guess this one is probably the new buy mark. So I'm just going to update this line to green. Yeah, I mean, that's really all I can do. There's not really much support outside this one point, uh, because anything above there, I mean, we could argue here's one instance at about 155. Here's an instance at about 159, 150. Outside of that, not really any like drops. I mean, 146 is like the ideal for this one. The 160, again, that was just, if we zoom back in, on this week specifically, a pullback would have been 160. So looking at this week, or if we go into next week, because we're in the weekend, a pullback would be like 175. So it depends on how you want to judge this one. If you're willing to wait, I'm sure someday, I don't know when, this could pull ultimately back to 146. There's not much support there. I I feel like a better one would be 136, but somewhere in that range, 136, 146. I feel like that's a decent support area. Um, that's if you're pessimistic on Apple and what it's going to do in the near term. If you like where it's heading, then by all means, there's potential to catch this one at about 175. Is that what I said? 175, 176, somewhere in that dollar range. In terms of resistance, next week would be 180. But outside of that, I'll say buy dips has reached new all-time high. So congrats on that. I guess what I'm looking at is clearly it's gotten to this point before, right here. When it got to that point, I mean, it pulled all the way back into like 130. Could that happen again? Sure. So we'll kind of see how this plays out. I'm going to update the date to today. Uh, and for now, I'm going to mark this one red. So this one, again, it really just depends on what you've seen in the news, how like positive you feel about this one. But overall, uh, I mean, there's just so many indicators that makes me feel like it might be too much at this point. But who knows? Maybe the growth is showing otherwise, and it's well deserved to be at this point. Uh, the only other thing before I move on to Google is sometimes when it hits a new all time high, it can rally pretty hard. So, what I mean by that is right here, back in 2021, 140 was the all time high. Um, okay, maybe that was a bad example, but 140 was the all time high in 2021. All of a sudden, it kind of got rejected, did what it did, and now here it comes back at 140, and it actually passed it, got into the 140, 142 mark, and then all of a sudden it surged to 150. So I guess in dollars that doesn't sound like a lot, but let's just take a look. 10 divided by 140, that's about 7% move. Uh, and sure, it pulled back down to that point. So now we have this all-time high at like 153. All of a sudden, it comes back again. And this time it goes from 153 all the way up to 180. So let's take a look at that one. So 27 divided by 153, 17% move. So that's potentially what could happen here. It and that's the thing that kind of stinks about, um, or why we want to kind of be in the news. Because if we read in the news that this is like they've come out with a new product, which I've kind of heard grumblings about, that I'm not sure how much that'll actually take place and impact this company, but if you have a good earnings report and there's some sort of indicator that's projecting new growth in the future, and you catch wind of that, and you see this all-time high get passed, which was again 180. Here we are again at like uh, we surpassed it. If we saw good indications on this one could easily say go up another 10%, which would close in on 200. So maybe that's the next stop. Um, we'll just see. Because I'm not well aware of this one, just based on the technicals, this one, I'm imagining it's going to pull back. How far? I think 146 is on the table, all the way down to say like 136. But without digging into it deeper, can't say. So if you have an opinion on this, by all means, let me know in the comments how you feel. I'd be happy to read that. So just to wrap up Apple here, Apple currently is at 180. I'm saying it's at resistance. I would need to know more about them. Buy points for me would be, what I'm going to do is mark 146 as bold, meaning that's kind of my buy point at this moment until I read up on them. 175, if you've already are confident in this one, you think this one's going to keep going up, then 175 would be a pullback and a time to load up. Resistance would be at 180. That's like its all-time high. Potentially it's going to get rejected there and pull back. We'll see how far down, if at all. So that's why I'm kind of on the fence about this. But otherwise, short-term uptrend's been in effect since January. So closing in on 6 months of solid, just up and up and up. I'd be interested in buying the dip on this one, but it needs to dip pretty low unless I find out something interesting about it. And then, of course, it has reached a new all-time high, which is great. So moving on to Google. Again, last time we looked at this was mid-April. So at that point, it was trading at 108. We marked out to buy it at 100 and resistance at 142. We also noticed a short-term uptrend. And financial statements were going to be available on April 26th. Haven't looked at them yet. Hopefully we'll analyze those the next time we check out Google more in depth. So let's take a look at Google. So yeah, this one really popped off, and this is something that could potentially happen with Apple. We'll see, of course, but this was the uptrend that we were referring to, uh, and I guess let's just take a step back and um, so this little green bar, that was the last time we looked at them. So it was within that uptrend. Since then, it kind of traded sideways for a couple weeks, then all of a sudden surged. The AI surge, I think, is what kind of is why this happened, this big surge here. And ever since that, I guess it kind of cooled off at about 120. So if you were buying at 100, uh, I'm not sure how much I know I bought some, not sure how much, but right there, that was 20% gain on a stock like this. So great job if you did do that. And what's nice about it is we have resistance at 142. So we're like only halfway there. Um, I will say that 120, we have that as like a fair value point. We have that, it was more so drawn in there as a resistance point. So I think there's a decent chance that this one could pull back. What I'm going to do is, and I could add a couple of these in here, but for whatever reason, this point right here, this seems to be a support line also. Um, I'm trying to figure out why I put in this green line here at about 100. I don't know if, oh, if I look back, so there was some support there. Not much in the more recent times. I think most recently about 106 we could argue is more support. We could also make a claim at like 96 or maybe 104. Somewhere in this range, I think is kind of like a support indicator. Uh, but yeah, so what I'm going to do is bump up the buy point on Google to 106. Possibly 122. But 122 was kind of meant to be like resistance. So what I'm going to add is 122 as resistance point. I think 142 is more in line. So I'm going to make 142 bold. And okay. I'm going to update the date also just so I don't forget. But right now it's at 122. And hopefully I showed where it was before. Yeah, right in here-ish. This little, yeah, so sideways, up, sideways. Anything else I want to do? I guess looking at this, I mean, this one's clearly, I mean, we can just, I just want to see if I drew this in maybe something like that. Would that make sense? Pull it down a little bit. Does that make sense? Possibly. We're at the high end. If we kind of manipulate our uptrend to that and feel like this was kind of outside of the range that it should have been, then we're clearly on the upper end, which is an indicator for me that I don't like it. So I'm actually going to mark this one red. I could mark it blue. There's a case for that, but again, until I dig into it further, I'm going to mark this red as it's at resistance. And that's based off here in about mid 2022, where it wasn't getting above 122, let alone like 120. So to see it kind of pull back a little bit, that's making sense. And so what I would say is possible with this one, especially based on the past 2 weeks, it pulling back, I think what could happen is we might see it pull back something like that. Um, Potentially it could pull back all the way down to here. I wouldn't be surprised by that. But I think it should at least pull back to here. I don't know how long it'll take. So depending on if it takes a couple weeks, it could be 120, which is not far off from where it is. Or it could, if it does it quickly, it could pull back to like 113, and I would buy it at that point. But overall, like what I'm trying to say is, I would buy the dip on this one because overall I think it's a good deal. Maybe not necessarily today at this moment, but if a couple months go past and I see their new earnings report and it shows good stuff and it's still at 120, then chances are I would say the complete opposite. I'd say it's actually a good deal today. But right now, based on kind of what I'm seeing, I kind of think it's at the upper end of the range. It's at a resistance point. Just don't like it right now. So I'm gonna be waiting until I don't know if it would pull back to 106. It's definitely possible, but I would say like maybe like 113. You know, 106 is like the real the real line, but I'm gonna put in 113 just so I know. Yeah, just it's pulled back enough that I would probably add to it, not by a lot, maybe just a share, maybe two, depending on the financial situation. But uh, that's pretty much wrapping this one up. And again, that purple line, I wouldn't put too much weight on it. But this one, short-term uptrend, similar to Apple, since January of 2023. Financials available 426, so we're right like halfway through the quarter, so we should definitely be able to check that one out the next time we circle back to this. I guess that's it for this right now. And this is just the range that I felt like it could possibly end up at the end of the year. Um, Once I dig into it further, I'll definitely update this. But that pretty much wraps up Google. So just a quick recap here. Currently it's at 122. I would buy this at 106 would be ideal. 113 is a dip opportunity that I would at least, maybe pick up one share. If it pulled back lower, I'd add on to it, hoping it would touch back to 106. That'd be, again, the ideal. Resistance is at 122, but really 142 is like, I would worry about 142. 122 is like, there's definitely some resistance there, but not enough to, it wouldn't stop me. I'd say that. Like if I didn't have any Google and I really wanted some, sure, 122. But I just feel like there's so many indicators right now that are saying, let's wait. Let's wait to see if this pulls back into the teens, preferably the low 110s, and just kind of play it that way. So for now, I'm saying it's at resistance, so it's red. Uh, and finally, we have Amazon. So again, last time we looked at this one, about a month and a half ago, close to 2 months, mid-April. At that point, it was trading at 102. We had a buy point marked at 103 with resistance at 174. We'll see how that's changed. And we also noted that it was consolidating between about a $10 range between 91 and 102. Not sure how long that was going on, so let's take a look, see what's happened since. Okay, so I'm noticing a couple things. I guess let's start off with whenever we last checked on this was somewhere in here, probably closer to the green mark, because this week, this green bar, it shows week ending 421. So the 16th must have been maybe like a Tuesday of this week. So it probably was in this range, maybe like 104. Well, it says 102, so I guess it was near the bottom of this. But ever since then, it traded flat for a couple weeks, and then similar to Google, it popped off all the way reaching up to 123. So I know I added some shares of this in the $100 range. Again, I don't know how many shares. At some point, I'd like to put that together to show just how we've been doing this year since we started tracking these. But again, similar to Google, if you bought on this close to 100 like I did, we would have made about 20% just on this quick move over the past like month and a half, which is great. We'll see, of course, over time what happens. Right off the bat, so this was two scenarios I felt that could happen with this one. This yellow one, this yellow line here, that was just based on, hey, in the past it's been trading between that 91, 103 dollar range. Let's just see if it continues bouncing. Clearly that scenario didn't play out, so we can remove that. This purple one's playing out a little bit better than I thought. I'm not sure. I guess we saw the uptrend, and so we figured there was also a scenario where it could just continue upwards, and potentially it would pull back. We thought it would pull back closer to I don't know, May. I don't really understand. I'm not sure why I chose that point as an inflection. I don't know if there was like financials that came out around that time, or I don't believe so. So I'm not sure why I chose that. Probably was just random, just to show that it would do sort of like an uptrend type thing where it would pull back. Clearly it hasn't pulled back yet. So all I would do is like do this. Maybe it's gonna kind of step up like that. Potentially. We'll see. But let's just zoom out, and I wish I could go back. But yeah, this one was like, where was it? It was something like that, and I had it down here, something like that. I don't know. Um, I guess we'll just remove it because clearly it's that prediction was kind of right, but not really that great. Let's see if we can find some sort of uptrend here. What if we drew it in somewhere like this, and that line goes out till October, so that'll give us some time. And then let's just pull it to something like here, and we'll try to make it parallel to a degree. That looks pretty good. So this might be the uptrend channel, and this goes back very similar to Google and Apple, right around January. We're just going to call it January. We could say it started in end of December, but really January. So I'm going to add in there short-term uptrend since January 2023. The consolidation, that is done with, I'm going to say. So I'm just going to remove that, but that was in effect kind of from January to about April. I mean, about easily 3 months where it was just trading between that range. But we're now saying this uptrend's in effect. We're at the high end. So again, indicators are telling me put this as resistance, but let's not do that quite yet. I want to analyze a little bit further. So 102, we're now at 123. A buy point for me, well, I like 103 so far. Is there any other support? You know, I would say like this is more a support line all the way up at 153. Not much else. Support? Yeah, in all honesty, even 103 isn't really support. I mean, there was a little bit here, but even if we use that, we might want to raise it up a little bit. Something like that kind of makes more sense, about like 108. So if I were to say a buy point for this one, again, depending on, you know, your feelings for it, like if you believe in this one, you believe that uptrend's going to continue for months on end, then you would want to buy this, or at least you would want to consider buying this at the very bottom of the range, which actually happens to be our buy point of about 108. Let me just double check. About 110 to be precise would be the bottom of the channel, and we had 108 as support, so I'm just going to update it to 108. 110, same thing. I would still pick it up there. Um, what is nice about this one is doesn't really seem to be much resistance on this one. I mean, 145. Um, is there any other resistance? Like the 174 actually kind of seems high. Just looking at it again, I might pull this back to about here-ish, somewhere here, and maybe up here, like 172. That's about where I had it. Um, Actually, it's at 171, very close to 172. So I'm going to pull the resistance back a little bit to, we'll say 171. Buying at 108, I would do that. But yeah, I mean, there's not really much resistance here. So this one could easily go up to 153. For that reason, I will give this one a fair value. I hopefully you see why I'm marking this one fair value compared to the other ones. Because yeah, this one potentially has a lot of growth, and there's not much of a reason. Like this one could easily pop up to the 170s because again, I'm not seeing much resistance here. I mean, where it is right now, like I guess I could have put it at 116. It's gone through that. I mean, this is just one instance at 124. I mean, looking back into 2020, I guess we could say it's kind of hit its head there twice, but I don't really like that. Um, 144, nothing really is there. 153. I mean, here's kind of one instance. I guess you could argue that's two, just because I mean, it's gone up to 160. Like, that, I would be more inclined to put it there. 165. We could pull this back a little bit, actually. So let's pull it back to 167. Let's pull it back to 167 as resistance. So, yeah, I hope you're seeing why this one's going to get rated a fair value, meaning I wouldn't be opposed to buying this even here at the upper limits of the uptrend. I wouldn't be opposed, but for this one, I would be willing to wait a little bit. I'd want to see what it did next week. If it pulls back a little bit, and potentially I'd buy it there. But yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to this one. And so let's just kind of wrap it up here. Whoops. So we have Amazon. Currently it's at 123. My buy point is 108 with resistance at 167. We noted it's in a short-term uptrend since January of 2023. So we'll see how it continues to play out. But yeah, just before I go, I just want to show so with Apple, the reason why it got marked red is because we have this resistance point at 180. It's currently at 180. Yes, I realize it could continue to reach new highs for the next month and reach up to 200 potentially, but that's why it's getting that red signal. It's gone way up to a point where we didn't think it would reach this quickly. And then Google, same thing. We have currently it's at 122. We have resistance at 122, the very same price of where it is right now. Ultimately, we do have 142 marked as bold, so it's more so 142 is the primary. So Google was close to being marked fair value, but over I felt like clearly I must have felt that there was enough resistance at 122. Plus, I believe it was at the upper end of the range, so there was a couple things that I felt. I probably wouldn't get this one at this point, but then with Amazon, currently 123, and we don't have resistance until 167. So that's $40 worth of growth before I would say, whoa, this one's getting overvalued. So I hope you're seeing the difference of why this one got rated blue as opposed to red. But of course, if you have any questions, by all means, let me know, and I'd be happy to do my best to answer that. But otherwise, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.